The Mirathi negotiator stopped mid-sentence. Her primary eye cluster, a grouping of 6 large optical sensors, fixed on something behind Voss's shoulder. He did not turn, he knew what she saw. The viewport dominated the far wall. It showed a human orbital factory. The structure was ugly. It had scaffolding and prefabricated hull plating. It was completing its 3rd warship that week. Voss waited. He had spent 6 years cultivating this contact. Her name was Aldra Veth. She was a junior representative on the Mirathi Assembly's trade subcommittee. She believed humans were useful but crude. That was the seed he had planted. He meant to water it today. "Your production rates are obscene," Veth said. Her voice carried a low harmonic undertone. The tone meant she was processing new data. She found the information uncomfortable. "They are reliable," Voss said. "That is the point." He kept his posture relaxed. His hands rested on the polished table surface. Room smelled of recycled air and the metallic tang from the station's life support systems. A single data tablet sat between them. It contained the proposal. Veth's mandibles clicked once. The sharp sound was a sign of frustration. "The Assembly will not accept raw volume as a substitute for quality," she said. "I'm not asking them to accept a substitute," Voss said. "I'm offering a compliment." He tapped the tablet. The display lit with a schematic. It showed a hull design. The lines were elegant. The internal layout was efficient. It was Mirathi work. Voss had paid a retired Mirathi architect for the blueprints. The sum was respectable. The architect had no idea about the true commissioner of the work. "Your shipwrights build art," Voss said. "My factories build shells. The two are not in competition. The market for warships is not a single market. It has 2 tiers. One is high-end, the other is high volume. You cannot serve both. We can serve one each. Together we serve the whole market." Veth studied the schematic. Her eye cluster moved across the display. She checked the numbers and the mass estimates. She reviewed the power output projections. She confirmed the crew requirements. Everything was within acceptable Mirathi tolerances. "This design is competent," she said. "Where did your engineers acquire the template?" "We reverse-engineered it from a derelict," Voss said. The lie was smooth. "A freighter drifted into human space after a pirate attack. We rebuilt the internals." "The outer skin is pure Mirathi lineage." Veth flickered her secondary lids. The transparent membrane slid across her main eyes and retracted in a fraction of a second. She believed him. The lie held because it fit her assumptions. Humans could copy, they could not create. That was the flaw he intended to exploit. "The Assembly will demand an audit," she said. "They will want to inspect your facilities. They will want guarantees. Human mass production must not corrupt the integrity of the design." "I expect nothing less," Voss said. "I will welcome their inspectors. I will open every bay. They will see exactly what I want them to see." He did not say the second half aloud. Veth leaned back, her chair adjusted to her spinal angle. The Mirathi were comfortable with automation. They were not comfortable with scale. Scale implied replication. Replication implied loss of soul. That was the cultural wall. Voss had to navigate it. "You are asking me to take this to the trade subcommittee," Veth said. "You are asking me to stand before my peers. You want me to argue human industry can be trusted with Mirathi design philosophy. I'm asking you to argue a point," Voss said. "The Mirathi Assembly cannot afford to pretend the galaxy stopped evolving. Your shipwrights are the finest in known space. No one disputes this. But fine does not win a war of attrition. Fine loses when the enemy has 3 hulls for every one of yours." Veth's mandibles clicked twice. The sound mixed irritation with acknowledgement. She knew he was right. That knowledge was why she had agreed to this meeting. "I will present the proposal," she said. "I cannot guarantee a favorable outcome." "I do not need a guarantee," Voss said. "I need a conversation." He stood. The meeting was over. He extended his hand in a human gesture. She had learned to tolerate it. She touched her palm to his. The contact lasted exactly 2 seconds. It was long enough for politeness. It was short enough to avoid intimacy. "You are an unusual species, Broker Voss," Veth said. "You build with the bluntness of a hammer. Then you wield the subtlety of a scalpel." "That is the nicest thing anyone has said to me this week," Voss said. She did not laugh. Mirathi did not laugh. Her mandibles relaxed. That was close enough. Voss left the conference room. The corridor beyond was narrow and dimly lit. The architecture was standard, functional, unadorned. He walked toward his quarters at a measured pace. His heart rate was elevated. It always was after a high-stakes negotiation. He did not show it. His quarters were a single room with a bunk, a desk, and a terminal. The space was Spartan. He preferred it that way. Clutter slowed thinking. He sat at the desk. He accessed the secure channel. The message arrived 30 minutes later. It had one line: "The Assembly will never agree to this." Voss read it twice. Then he smiled. He had not asked them to. The proposal was bait. The audit was the trap. Every Mirathi inspector would set foot in those factories. They would see exactly what Voss wanted them to see. The inspectors would see an impressive but limited operation. They would see a competent but contained human consortium. They would report back. They would say humanity was a manageable partner. The inspectors would not see the secondary production lines. They would not see the stockpiles. They would not see the third orbital factory. That facility was assembling in a neighboring system. It would bring hull number 4 online. It would come online the week after the audit concluded. Voss composed his reply. The assembly does not need to agree. The conversation has already begun. Let the inspectors come. He sent it. Then he opened a second channel. It used a different encryption and went to a different recipient. This recipient was not on the station. They were 12 light years away. They sat in an office smelling of real wood and old paper. The message was 2 words. Seed planted. The response came back in under a minute. Years of patience. Voss closed the terminal. He lay back on the bunk and stared at the ceiling panels. The station hummed around him. It was a constant vibration. It was the sound of machines working. It was the sound of industry. He thought about Aldra Veth. She was competent. She was honest. She believed she was acting in the best interests of her people. She was. The problem was simple. Her people had not yet understood what their best interests actually required. The Mirathi assembly valued craftsmanship. They valued tradition. They valued the slow, patient art of building something to last a lifetime. Those were noble values. They were also dead values. The galaxy was not patient. The galaxy did not reward the slow. It rewarded the fast, the numerous, and the cheap. The Mirathi had not realized this yet. By the time they did, the window would have closed. Voss closed his eyes. He did not sleep. He waited. The first inspectors would arrive in 3 standard weeks. He had much to prepare. The visible factories needed to shine, the hidden ones needed to stay hidden, and Aldra Veth needed to remain exactly where she was, a junior representative on the trade subcommittee, the perfect conduit, unsuspected, useful. The steel tide was not a wave, it was a current. The current was slow, inexorable, and invisible until too late. Voss intended to be the man to turn it. The numbers did not make sense. Aldra Veth reviewed the human production logs for the 3rd time. She checked the calibration on her display. The numbers were correct. Human factories produced 1 cruiser every 11 days. A Mirathi shipyard required 17 months for a vessel of equivalent capability. The quality difference was real. Mirathi ships lasted centuries. Human ships lasted decades, but the humans did not care. They built faster than they could be destroyed. Veth leaned back from her workstation. The display cast a pale blue glow across her face. Her breathing deepened. She experienced threshold dissonance. The sensation was the mental equivalent of a joint slipping out of place. No injury occurred. The body simply refused to accept the new position. She read the figures again. 11 days, 17 months. The ratio was 46-1. The humans were not competing. They were overwhelming. They treated starships like disposable tools. That was not engineering. That was waste. Veth closed the logs. She stood. Her quarters were small and functional. A Mirathi shipwright would have carved the wall panels by hand. Each grain of wood would tell a story. Each joint would be a signature. The human station had extruded walls. These walls were identical in every room. The humans called it efficiency. She called it a lack of soul. She reached for her communication panel. The signal traveled through the station's core network to a diplomatic relay. Then it connected to the Mirathi assembly compound on the planet below. The council of experts assembled within the hour. They were 8 individuals. Each was a master in their field. Veth was the youngest by 40 years. She was also the only one to have met a human face-to-face. She presented her findings. The display showed production curves. It showed the tonnage differential. It showed fleet projection models. The numbers were stark. They were undeniable. The oldest counselor spoke first. His name was Elder Thren. He had designed warships for 6 decades. Thren said the human hulls would corrode within 20 years. He said their power conduits would fail after a major engagement. He said their reactors were built with reckless tolerance margins. Mirathi engineers would never approve them. Veth nodded. All of that was true. Thren insisted Mirathi technology was superior. He declared quality always defeated quantity. History proved it. The other counselors murmured their agreement. They cited the ancient war with the Krix swarm. The Krix were a horde of chitinous bioships. They devoured everything in their path. The Mirathi defeated them through precision targeting. They cited the Thornwall siege. A planetary blockade lasted 7 cycles. Each enemy vessel was destroyed with surgical accuracy. They cited the chronodrift containment. The anomaly threatened to collapse spacetime. Only careful calibration prevented disaster. In every case, precision had triumphed over volume. Veth did not argue. She felt another unfamiliar sensation. It was a new recognition. History might be a poor guide. The humans had only been in galactic society for 300 years. They had no traditions. They had no artisan heritage. They had factories. The council dismissed her concerns. They thanked her for her diligence. They instructed her to maintain the human liaison relationship. It was useful for intelligence gathering. It was not a strategic priority. Veth ended the transmission. She stood alone in her quarters. The extruded walls did not judge her. They did not comfort her either. She called up the human broker's file. Voss, no family name, no guild affiliation, just a single name, just a corporate identifier. The humans had no guilds, they had employment contracts. They changed jobs as easily as they changed ships. She studied his profile, 6 years of negotiation experience. 3 major deals closed, a reputation for patience, a reputation for precision. The last quality was unusual. Most humans she had met were impatient. They wanted results in days, not years. Voss had waited 6 years. He had cultivated the contact slowly. He presented the proposal at exactly the right moment. That was not typical human behavior. That was something else. Veth made a decision. She requested a transfer to the human liaison office. The request would mean leaving the assembly. It would mean living among humans. It would mean accepting a lower status within Mirathi society. Her superiors granted the request within hours. They were puzzled by her interest. They did not question it. She was a valuable asset. If she wanted to observe the humans more closely, that was her prerogative. Veth began packing her belongings. She had few possessions. A Mirathi scholar traveled light. The only items of value were her data archives. They contained 3 decades of research. They contained her personal logs. They contained the production logs. She had reviewed those logs 46 times. She paused at the last item. The number had stuck in her mind, 46-1. It was not a ratio of quality. It was a ratio of production. It was a ratio. The humans did not find it remarkable. She thought about the human station. She thought about the factory she had seen through the viewport. That factory had been building a warship hull. The skeleton had grown in real time, segment by segment, layer by layer. The welders had not paused. The assembly arms had not slowed. The ship had simply emerged from the structure. It was like a creature being born. The Mirathi shipwrights would have spent a month on the design alone. They would have carved the ceremonial runes by hand. They would have blessed each weld with a thermal prayer. The ship would be a work of art. The human ship would be finished in 11 days. It would fight for 20 years. Then it would be melted down and replaced. That was not waste. She realized it with a cold clarity. That was a strategy. The humans were not building ships. They were building a system. The system was designed to outproduce any opponent. The system was designed to survive attrition. The system was designed to win the wars. Mirathi doctrine considered those wars unwinnable. Veth closed her data case. She stepped out of her quarters. The corridor was empty. The station hummed with the sound of life support systems. It hummed with data traffic. The sound was constant. It was reliable. It was the sound of machines doing what they were told. She walked toward the transport bay. A human shuttle would take her to the liaison office. She would live among them. She would learn their methods. She would understand their thinking. She did not yet know she was walking into the trap Voss had laid. She did not yet know the proposal had been the first move. He was playing a longer game. She only knew the numbers did not lie. 46-1, and the humans were still building. The Mirathi cargo vessel drifted into the docking cradle. Its hull was a single piece of forged ceramic. The surface was seamless and beautiful. Vanderfeld Engineering could have stamped out that shape in 14 hours. The Mirathi had probably spent 6 months carving it by hand. Lucian Voss watched from the observation deck. The 10th such visit this month. Traffic was up 300% since the first year of the agreement. His agreement. He turned away from the viewport. His reflection followed him across the polished floor. He was a man in his mid-50s. His hair was gray at the temples. He wore a suit worth more than the station's environmental processor. He looked tired. He felt precise. The long game did not reward exhaustion. It rewarded patience. Voss walked the corridor toward his office. The walls were bare metal with exposed conduits. Human construction, practical and ugly. He had chosen this station precisely for its lack of aesthetic appeal. A beautiful office would have made the Mirathi suspicious. They expected humans to be brutish. He gave them what they expected. The office door recognized his gate. It opened without sound. His desk was a slab of composite. A single datapad sat on its surface. The station hummed around him. Ventilation fans, power relays, the subtle vibration of 1,000 factory presses working in synchronized rhythm. He had grown to love that sound. He sat down. He reviewed the morning reports. 3 new parts contracts had been signed overnight. Mirathi shipwrights were now using human fasteners in their secondary assemblies. They used human wiring harnesses in their non-critical systems. They used human coolant pumps in their environmental loops. Each component was a thread. The threads formed a rope. The rope was around their throat. They had tied the knot themselves. Voss felt a quiet satisfaction, not pride. Pride was a liability. He simply noted the numbers were moving in the right direction. The terminal chimed, a priority message from Earth. He opened it. His consortium had acquired 3 more orbital factories, 2 in the Neptune ring, 1 in the Jovian high orbit. Production capacity was up 40%. The board wanted a celebration. He typed a single word in reply. Noted. Celebration was for people who had finished something. He had barely started. A knock at the door, 3 precise taps. Mirathi protocol. "Come in," he said. The door opened. Aldra Veth stepped through. Her carapace was a deep blue now. It was darker than when he had first met her. The color shift meant increased status. She had risen in the hierarchy. Good. She carried a datapad in her primary hand. Her secondary hands were folded against her thorax. A formal posture, Broker Voss, she said. Her voice was a low hum with harmonics underneath. "I have a directive from the assembly." Voss gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please sit." She did not sit. She placed the datapad on his desk instead. "The assembly is imposing a tariff on all human-manufactured components, effective immediately. 23% ad valorem." He picked up the datapad. He read the document twice. The language was precise. Mirathi legalese was a labyrinth of nested clauses and conditional exceptions, but the core was clear, 23%, applied to every bolt, every wire, every pump. He set the datapad down. Then he smiled. "That is a reasonable measure," he said. "Your domestic industries must be protected." Veth tilted her head. The gesture was not human confusion. It was her species' equivalent of narrowed eyes. She had expected a different reaction. "You are not concerned," she stated. "Should I be?" "The tariff is punitive," she said. "It is designed to slow the flow of human goods into your supply chains." Voss leaned back in his chair. The cushion sighed. He let the silence stretch. 7 seconds. 8. Watched her mandibles twitch. "Aldra," he said, "may I show you something?" She hesitated. Then she gave a single nod. He turned his datapad toward her. A spreadsheet, green lines and red lines. The green lines climbed steeply. The red lines barely moved. "This is our export volume to Mirathi space over the last 18 months, he said. "The tariff was announced 3 months ago. Can you see where the tariff took effect?" She studied the graph. Her primary hand traced the line. "There is no change." "Correct." "The tariff was high," she said. "It should have reduced demand." Voss tapped the screen. The green line continued to climb. He switched to a different view, a breakdown by component category. "Your shipwrights are using our parts in 47% of your secondary systems," he said. "They use them in 12% of your primary systems." The tariff increased their costs. It also increased their dependence. They cannot afford to switch back. Your own guilds have already retired the tooling for those components. Veth's carapace shifted. A dull gray patch appeared near her shoulder joint. Stress response. He had seen it before. "You planned this," she said. "I planned for the possibility," he corrected. "I did not force it. Your people made their own choices. The tariff was your response to those choices. It was the wrong response. It locked the pattern in place." She stood very still. Her secondary hands unfolded. Then they folded again. "You are not angry," she said. "You are not even inconvenienced." Voss considered the question. He had spent 5 years in this cramped office. He had attended over 200 diplomatic receptions. He had endured thousands of hours of debate. They discussed thread pitch, pressure ratings, and thermal expansion coefficients. The work had been tedious. The work had been necessary. "I am satisfied," he said. "The plan is on schedule." Veth stared at him. Her eyes were compound. Thousands of individual lenses. He could see himself reflected in each one. "You are a predator," she said. "We did not recognize the shape." "I'm a broker," he said. "I find arrangements. The arrangements benefit both parties. I benefit more. This is not a breach of contract." She picked up the datapad. Her grip was tight. The ceramic case creaked. "The assembly will respond," she said. "There are factions. They will see what you have done." "Let them see," he said. "There is nothing to hide. Your engineers chose our parts for being cheaper and more available. Your guilds chose not to reinvest in domestic production. Your assembly chose the tariff. I simply provided options. Your people made the decisions." She turned toward the door, then she stopped. "Broker Voss," she said, "when you first showed me that schematic, the cruiser design, you said it came from a human architect. It did not, did it?" He did not answer. "The design was Mirathi," she said. "You stole it." He met her gaze. "I acquired it. Acquisition is not theft." She made a sound, a low vibration in her throat. It might have been laughter. It might have been something else entirely. "You are teaching us," she said. "You are teaching us how fragile our systems are, how easily they can be turned against us. I am teaching you what the galaxy looks like," he said, "when you are not the center of it." She left. The door closed behind her. Voss sat alone in the quiet hum of the station. He picked up the datapad again. Tariff directive was still on the screen. He read one clause again. The clause applied the tariff only to human-manufactured components. It did not apply to components from Mirathi subcontractors using human tooling, a loophole, a gap wide enough to fly a freighter through. He made a note. His contacts on the Mirathi Trade Subcommittee would need to be informed. The subcontractors would need to be activated. The paperwork would need to appear legitimate. It would take 6 months, maybe 7. By then, the tariff would be meaningless. The flow would have found a new channel. The station hummed around him. The factories pressed on. The numbers moved in the right direction. The warehouse stretched beyond sight. Rows of shelving rose 40 meters high. Each rack held identical metal cases. Each case contained a component, thousands of them, tens of thousands. Veth had seen human production figures on a screen. She had never stood inside the reality of them. Her feet ached from walking the concrete floor. The air smelled of lubricant and recycled oxygen. The lighting was harsh and uniform. Everything in this place was designed for efficiency. Nothing was designed for beauty. He stopped at a pallet of power couplings. The couplings sat in foam inserts. Each one was exactly the same as the next. They had the same casting marks. They had the same polish. They had the same weight. On Mirathi, a master artisan would have signed each coupling. Each one would have carried subtle variation. That variation was evidence of the hand that made it. These had no signatures. They had serial numbers. They were perfect. They were soulless. And they worked. A human approached from between two shelving units. The name badge read Tessa Marlowe, logistics specialist. She was shorter than most humans Veth had met. Her hair was pulled back in a severe knot. She carried a data slate in one hand. "We have the next shipment ready," Marlowe said. Her voice was flat and efficient. 20,000 power couplings, delivery in 3 days. Veth nodded. She had seen the manifests. She had approved the transfer. The routine of it felt natural now. That feeling troubled her. She asked a question that had been forming for months. "What do you need from us in return?" Marlowe looked confused, her brow furrowed. "The standard payment, credits. Why?" Veth did not answer. She could not explain. The question had felt important. The answer had felt inevitable. The humans asked for credits. They never asked for technology. They never asked for access. They only wanted what they already had, more of it. She turned and walked deeper into the warehouse. Marlowe followed at a respectful distance. The shelves continued in every direction. They were identical and endless, a forest of metal and plastic and wire. Veth tried to remember the last time she had seen a Mirathi-built power coupling. She could not. She had seen schematics. She had read specifications. But the physical object had disappeared from her daily experience. It had been replaced by these, by human product, by human reliability, by human volume. She stopped walking. The realization settled into her bones. It felt like pressure behind her eyes. It felt like the moment before a ship hit atmospheric turbulence. She had known this was happening. She had watched it happen. She had approved it, but she had never understood the scale. Specialist Marlowe, Veth said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "How many of these warehouses do you operate?" Marlowe tapped her data slate. "Currently, 487 across 13 systems. This one services Sector 7, 487. Veth did the calculation. Each warehouse held components for hundreds of ships. Each component was produced in quantities Mirathi guilds could not match in a century. The humans did not think about this. They simply produced. Pattern collapse, she whispered. The term was old. It came from the pre-industrial era. It described the moment an artisan saw a machine replicate their work. The mind could not process it. Reality broke into two incompatible versions. One should exist, the other did. Marlowe tilted her head. "Are you feeling unwell, Ambassador? We have a medical bay on site." "I am fine," Veth said. "I need to see the shipping manifests, all of them, for the past 10 years. Marlowe blinked. "That is a significant amount of data. Privacy restrictions may apply. Override them." Veth turned to face the human directly. "I'm authorizing a full audit of Mirathi supply chains. This is not a request." Marlowe held her gaze for a long moment, then she nodded. "I will contact my supervisors. They will need to coordinate with your government. My government will comply." Veth hoped that was true. She was no longer certain what her government would do. She had been away from the assembly for 10 years. She had become something else, something that saw these shelves and felt dread instead of pride. She walked back toward the warehouse entrance. The exit seemed impossibly far. The shelves pressed in on both sides. The components waited in their foam cradles. They were patient. They were identical. They were inevitable. The audit took 6 weeks to compile. Veth spent those weeks in her human-designed office. She reviewed contracts. She cross-referenced production logs. She interviewed guild masters forced into retirement. She found patterns. Her carapace itched. The results arrived on a standard data chip. Veth inserted it into her terminal. The numbers displayed in human format. They were clear. They were devastating. 60% of all Mirathi ship components were now sourced from human manufacturers. 60%. The drives came from Luna. The power couplings came from Mars. The hull plating came from the belt. The control systems came from a dozen human worlds. Only the frames and the artistic elements were still built on Mirathi. The soul of the ship was still Mirathi. The body was human. Veth closed the file. She sat in the silence of her office. The ventilation hummed. The lights flickered with the station's power cycle. She thought about the assembly. She thought about Elder Thren. She thought about the tariff Voss had laughed at. The humans had not demanded surrender. They had not conquered any territory. They had not fired a single shot. They had simply offered a better product at a lower price. They had been patient. They had been reliable. They had become indispensable. The assembly had a choice. Continue the dependency and accept Mirathi shipbuilding would never recover. Or spend a decade rebuilding independent capacity from nothing. The guilds were gone. The knowledge was scattered. The tooling had been sold for scrap. Veth looked at the data chip. She could delete it. She could pretend she had never seen the numbers. She could return to her role as a liaison. She could let the future unfold without interference. She picked up her communicator. She entered the frequency for the Council of Experts. The connection took 6 seconds to establish. "This is Veth," she said. "I need to speak with Elder Thren." Immediately, she waited for the response. The humans had won. They had won without a war, they had won without a treaty, they had won by being more patient than any species had a right to be. Veth stared at the data chip in her hand. It weighed almost nothing. It contained the end of her civilization's independence. She had helped build this future. She had approved every contract. She had signed every requisition. The communicator crackled. Elder Thren's voice emerged. "Ambassador, this is unexpected." Veth took a breath. She had a choice. She could tell the truth, or she could protect her people from the knowledge of their own defeat. "The humans have won," she said. Her voice was steady. "I need you to understand what that means." Mirathi Assembly Hall was silent. Voss stood at the speaker's podium. He was flanked by 2 human security officers. The officers were ceremonial. The real power was in the room. 15 years of work had brought him here. The circular chamber curved around him. It had tiers of polished obsidian. Each tier held 100 Mirathi counselors. Their carapaces flickered with colors. Voss had learned to read those colors. Blue meant authority. Red meant anger. The room was a sea of pulsing crimson. Counselor Saren Malker rose from the lowest tier. She was small for a Mirathi. Her voice was not small. "Broker Voss, you will explain the supply interruption." Voss placed both hands on the podium. The gesture was calm. It was deliberate. He had practiced this moment in his quarters for 3 weeks. "Rival human interests have acquired the patents for your thruster waveguide. A waveguide is the heart of every Mirathi drive. Without that component, a ship cannot move." The hall rippled with chittering distress. Counselor Malker's carapace flushed darker. "Your consortium holds 50-year contracts. You guaranteed uninterrupted supply. My consortium holds contracts with Mirathi guilds," Voss said. "Those guilds sold their waveguide tooling to a third party. That third party was acquired by my competitors yesterday. I do not control what third parties do with their property." The lie was clean. It was precise. He had arranged the acquisition himself. The shell corporations were buried under 7 layers of jurisdiction. No audit would find him. Another counselor rose. It was Elder Thren. Voss recognized the faded carapace from Veth's old reports. "Your competitors have made demands. They want exclusive access to Mirathi scientific data. They want your research archives. They want your genetic libraries. They want your ancestral knowledge." Voss did not blink. "Then you have a choice. You can negotiate with them. Or you can rebuild your waveguide industry from scratch. You know, that takes a decade," Thren said. "I know the Mirathi Assembly values quality over speed," Voss said. "I know you have never mass-produced a waveguide. I know your guilds insist on handcrafting each component. That is your cultural strength. It is also your vulnerability." Silence followed. The crimson pulses slowed. They were thinking. Voss could see it in the way their antennae drooped. They were running calculations. They were running projections. Every simulation led to the same dead end. Counselor Malker stepped closer to the podium. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. The amplification system still carried it. "You planned this. From the beginning." Voss did not deny it. "I offered you a deal. You took it. Every step was transparent. You just did not want to see the end result." He remembered Aldra Veth's face when she first saw the factory, the way her carapace had dimmed, the way she had counted the ships, 46 to 1. She had seen it. She had warned them. They had not listened. "We showed you production numbers 15 years ago," Voss said. "We showed you the supply chain dependencies. We showed you how quickly our factories could outpace your guilds. You chose to believe quality would always prevail. It did not." Counselor Malker's claws scraped the obsidian floor. The sound was sharp. It was unpleasant. "You made us dependent. Then you let your vulture competitors pick at the carcass." Voss spread his hands. "I made you partners. Partnerships require trust. You trusted my consortium. You did not trust the other human factions. That was your strategic error. It was not mine." He paused. He let the words settle. Then he delivered the final piece. "There is a solution," he said. "My consortium can acquire the waveguide patents back from my competitors. We can restore full supply within 2 weeks." The hall erupted. Chittering voices overlapped. Carapaces flickered between red and blue. Counselor Malker raised a hand. The noise died. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing new," Voss said. "The same terms we have always offered. Exclusive supply rights, priority access to Mirathi research, a non-negotiable clause. Your military procurement must come through my consortium. You want us to formalize the dependency. I want you to acknowledge the reality," Voss said. "Your guilds cannot compete with human production. No Mirathi guild can. No species in this sector can. The math is simple. You have 2 options. You can accept a formal partnership with my consortium, or you can face economic collapse while your rivals pick at your resources." Counselor Malker stared at him. Her carapace was steady. It was flat gray, the color of calculation. "And if we nationalize your facilities, if we seize every human-owned supply depot in Mirathi space?" Voss felt a distant sadness. He had liked Aldra Veth. She had been a genuine friend. They had shared meals. They had discussed philosophy. She had taught him the names of her homeworld's constellations, but the plan was always the plan. The friendship was a tool. He had used it well. You can nationalize the visible assets, Voss said. The warehouses, the factories, the registered shipping routes. Those will take years of litigation to recover. But the patents are held by shell corporations. Those corporations are registered in 6 different jurisdictions. The supply contracts are written in human law. Your courts cannot overturn that law. The credit lines are structured through banks. Those banks do not recognize Mirathi authority. He paused. He let the weight settle. You can seize the machinery, he said. You cannot seize the knowledge. You cannot seize the manufacturing relationships. You cannot seize the systems making human production possible. Those are not in your space. They are not in your jurisdiction. They are not within your reach. Counselor Malker's claws scraped the floor again, louder this time. You are telling us we are already conquered. I am telling you that you made choices, Voss said. I am telling you choices have consequences. I am telling you that you can still choose the best outcome available to you, but you cannot choose a return to the past. That option is gone. The hall was silent. The crimson pulses had faded. The blue was returning, not the bright blue of authority. A dim blue, the color of acceptance. Counselor Malker turned away from the podium. She walked back to her tier. She did not look at Voss again. The vote took 3 hours. Voss waited in an anteroom. He drank water. He reviewed his notes. He did not pace. A messenger arrived. Her carapace was young. It was pale. It was unreadable. The Assembly has voted to nationalize all human-owned supply facilities within Mirathi space. Nationalization takes effect in 30 days. Voss nodded. Thank the Assembly for their decision. The messenger hesitated. You do not seem concerned. Voss smiled. It was not a warm smile. I am not concerned. The messenger left. Voss pulled out his personal tablet. He opened the file marked Contingency 7. It was a list of legal challenges. He had already prepared them. Each challenge would take 18 to 24 months to resolve. By then, the dependency would be complete. The Mirathi would have no choice but to negotiate. He looked out the anteroom window. The stars were steady. The void was patient. He had spent 15 years building this. He could wait a little longer. The factory floor crunched beneath Aldra Veth's feet. The concrete was still warm. The steel beams above her head were blackened with plasma fire. Mirathi extremists had done this. They had bombed the human facility 3 months ago. The production line was gone. The workers were dead. The site was a ruin, but the humans had already rebuilt it. Veth walked through the new facility 1 mile away. The walls were thicker. The security gates were taller. The assembly arms moved with the same relentless rhythm. She remembered that rhythm. The bombing had cost the humans 9 days of production. 9 days. Then the line started again. She pressed her palm against the observation glass. The heat from the furnaces bled through. The Mirathi War was 3 months old now. It had started as a protest against the trade agreements. It had escalated into riots. The riots became blockades. The blockades became something else. Now Mirathi ships fired on human convoys. Human ships fired back. Veth pulled up a recording on her wrist display. The battle at Kethro's Prime. A single Mirathi cruiser had engaged 10 human frigates. Her people had the better ship. They had the better crew. They had the better weapons. They destroyed 6 of the human vessels in the first engagement. The remaining 4 human ships did not retreat. They did not signal surrender. They increased speed and rammed the cruiser. All 4 of them rammed it. The cruiser was lost with all hands. The humans considered it a fair trade. Veth closed the recording. Her species had no word for this. Mirathi fought battles. Mirathi won or they lost. Mirathi did not calculate exchange ratios. They did not trade ships for time. But the humans did. They called it industrial strategy. She walked to the neutral meeting zone. It was a small room between the old factory and the new one. The walls were bare metal. The lighting was harsh. The table was bolted to the floor. Voss was already there. He looked older. His hair was gray at the temples. His face was lined, but his eyes were the same, calm, measuring, unbroken. Veth sat across from him. She had known him for 18 years. She had watched him dismantle her economy piece by piece. She had watched him turn her guilds into dependent children. She had watched him lie to her council. He smiled while doing it. She respected him. She hated him. She needed him. How many more ships do you have? She asked. Voss folded his hands on the table. His voice was calm. Enough, that is not an answer. It is the only one I have. Veth felt the old anger rise in her chest. She forced it down. Anger was useless here. The humans did not respond to anger. They responded to numbers. I have seen your production logs, she said. Your output has increased. Of course it has. Explain. Voss leaned back. He looked at her with something like pity. Aldra, you bombed our factory. We lost 9 days. Then we built a better one. That is what we do. You destroy something. We build something stronger. You kill our workers. We train more workers. You sink our ships. We launch more ships. He paused. His voice dropped lower. You do not understand us yet. You have been fighting us for 3 months. You think this is a war. It is not. This is a production problem. We will solve it. Veth sat in silence. The lights hummed overhead. The vents pushed recycled air through the room. She felt the weight of everything she had seen in 18 years. The warehouse with 487 locations. The cruiser every 11 days. The shipping manifests showing 60% dependency. The tariff that changed nothing. She had thought the humans were crude. She had thought them simple. She had thought their lack of artistry was a weakness. She was wrong. The humans were not crude. They were relentless. They did not need to win every battle. They only needed to survive long enough to build more ships. Veth stood up. She walked to the window. The new factory glowed in the distance. The assembly arms moved in perfect synchronization. The furnaces burned without rest. "Do you know what my council calls this?" she asked. "I can guess," Voss said. "They call it savage. They call it soulless. They say you have no honor." Voss said nothing. "I told them honor does not win wars," Veth said. "Volume does." She turned back to him. Her carapace was flat. There was no stress response. There was no anger. There was just exhaustion. "How long?" she asked. "How long until what?" "How long until we run out of ships?" Voss looked at the table. He did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "Your shipyards are operating at full capacity. You have lost 37 cruisers in 3 months. You have lost 112 frigates. You have lost 40% of your cargo fleet to our interdiction." He looked up at her. "You are building 9 cruisers per month. You are losing 12. At current rates, you have 6 months of combat-effective vessels remaining. After that, you will be forced to use civilian transports. After that, you will have nothing." Veth closed her eyes. She had done the same math. She had hoped she was wrong. Meanwhile, Voss continued, "We have 17 orbital factories. Each one launches a cruiser every 11 days. We have 32 more factories under construction. We have lost nothing. Our production has increased." He stood up. He walked to the window beside her. "Do you understand now, Aldra? This is not a war. This is a delay. You are not fighting for victory. You are fighting for time, and you are running out." Veth stared at the factory. The lights flickered. The arms moved. The furnaces burned. The humans had built this in 9 days. They had built it better than the last one. They would build it again if she bombed it. They would build it 100 times. They would build it until the Mirathi assembly had nothing left to throw at it. Her wrist display chimed. A classified report. She opened it. The data scrolled across her eyes. Human production had increased. It had not stayed the same. It had not recovered to pre-war levels. It had grown. The bombing had not slowed them down. It had hardened their resolve. They were not fighting to win. They were waiting for the Mirathi to run out of ships. Veth looked at Voss. His face was calm. His hands were steady. He had planned this. He had planned all of it. 18 years of patience. 18 years of building dependencies. 18 years of making sure the Mirathi could not fight a war without him. And now the war was here, and he was winning. 6 months, Veth whispered. "Less," Voss said. "You are burning fuel faster than we predicted. Your crews are tired. Your supply lines are stretched. Your guilds are running out of raw materials." He turned to face her. "You started this war, Aldra. I did not want it. I tried to control it. But now it is here. It will end one of 2 ways. Your council surrenders, or your council runs out of ships." Veth looked at the factory. She thought of her homeworld. She thought of the assembly hall. She thought of the crimson carapaces and the angry voices. They had been so proud. They had been so certain. They had been so wrong. "How much time do I have?" she asked. Voss checked his chronometer. "The first of your logistics hubs will collapse in 8 weeks. The second will follow 3 weeks later. After that, your fleet will be unable to operate outside your home system. And the humans, we will still be here. We will still be building. We will still be waiting." Veth nodded slowly. She felt something shift inside her. 18 years of resistance, 18 years of trying to understand. She understood now. The humans did not fight with weapons. They fought with factories. They did not win with strategy. They won with volume. They did not need to be better. They only needed to be more. She looked at Voss one last time. "I will tell my council," she said. "Tell them what?" She did not answer. She walked out of the room. She walked past the guards. She walked toward the transport that would take her home. Behind her, the factory burned on. The arms moved. The furnaces blazed. The humans were still building. The treaty was signed in a neutral station. Voss represented the human consortium. Veth represented the Mirathi assembly. The terms were simple. The Mirathi would open their systems to human industrial development. In exchange, the humans would stop the war. Veth looked at him across the polished steel table. Her carapace had faded to a deep indigo now. 20 years of stress and compromise had left their marks. She spoke quietly. "Was this your plan?" From the first meeting. Voss considered the question. He let the silence stretch. The plan was to demonstrate a point. Cooperation is more profitable than conflict. The demonstration took longer than expected. But the result is the same. She made a sound. It might have been a laugh on a human throat. "You starved us. You bombed our factories. You turned our guilds into dependencies. You call that a demonstration. I call it a proof of concept," Voss said. "Your shipwrights still build the finest hulls in the sector. Your engineers still design elegant systems. The difference is simple. Now those hulls are filled with human components. Those systems rely on human logistics. You are not diminished. You are augmented." Veth's mandibles clicked once. The click was a Mirathi gesture of reluctant acceptance. We are dependent. You are specialized, Voss corrected. There is a difference. Dependence implies you cannot function alone. Specialization means you choose not to function alone. The choice was yours every step of the way. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she reached into her satchel. She pulled out a data chip. She placed it on the table. The Council of Experts ratified the treaty this morning. The vote was unanimous. Even Elder Thren agreed. Voss raised an eyebrow. Thren voted for surrender. That surprises me. He voted for survival, Veth said. He reviewed the production numbers one last time. He calculated our remaining shipyards. He compared them to your factory output. The math was unambiguous. Voss nodded slowly. Threshold dissonance is a difficult experience. I imagine it took him some time to process. He spent 3 days in his quarters, Veth said. He did not eat. He did not speak. When he emerged, his carapace had shifted to a pale gray. I have never seen a Mirathi lose color like that. Voss felt a small pang of something. It was not guilt. It was recognition. He had seen that same gray on human faces. Factory workers who realized their jobs were being automated. Soldiers who understood their war was lost. The color of a paradigm breaking. The treaty is generous, Veth said. Your consortium controls 60% of our orbital infrastructure. Your ships have unrestricted access to our trade lanes. Your factories operate on our soil with no tariffs. The assembly gave you everything you wanted. Not everything, Voss said. You kept your design sovereignty. You kept your cultural heritage. You kept your shipwright traditions. Those were never things I wanted to take. She looked at him with something approaching wonder. You could have taken them. You had the power. Power without consent is conquest, Voss said. Conquest requires occupation. Occupation costs more than it yields. I did the math. Veth made a sound. It was definitely a laugh this time, a dry, brittle sound. Of course you did the math. Voss reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small data chip. He placed it on the table between them. This is the production schedule for the next 5 years. It includes a shared shipyard. The output is human. The design is Mirathi. The first vessel launches in 18 months. Veth picked up the chip. She scanned it. Her eyes widened. The pupils dilated in that strange Mirathi way. This is a larger fleet than the Mirathi have ever possessed. In 5 years, Voss nodded. That is the point. We are not conquerors. We are partners. But the partnership is on our terms.